Evergreen certifications. Thank you for joining us today as we talk through one of our certifications, the ADHD Clinical Services Provider Certification. Today, I have the pleasure of one of our advisors joining me on this live. Stephanie, do you want to introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. Hi, Rachel. I'm Dr. Stephanie Sarkis. I am a national board certified counselor and a licensed mental health counselor in the state of Florida. And I've written 8 books and 2 workbooks, including one on executive functions and also books on ADHD.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again for joining us today. We'll kick into some questions we have around the certification, have some dialogue here. If our viewers have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we will answer those along the way as well. At any time on the live, if you want more information on the certification, any of its requirements, there is a QR code in the top of our screen. Feel free to scan that, as well as occasionally throughout this live, you'll see on the bottom a URL that you can go to get more information as well. So we'll kick off with our first question here. So in your professional opinion, why should someone get certified in ADHD treatment?
Well, first, there are 11 million people in the US that have ADHD, and that percentage, that 4.4%, is about the same around the world. So I think it really helps to have some standardized form of education, that there are varied topics that apply to ADHD, whether it's pediatric or adults. And I think especially when we have so much information available, it really helps to have it condensed into an easy to learn format. With engaging speakers. And I think it's a great way to learn information that for a lot of people that are getting certified in ADHD, they have ADHD as well. And I think that the way that the program is set up is really good for people that may have spurts of attention. So they're able to break pieces down of the training and do them on their own, which I think is a great help when you have ADHD.
Absolutely, yeah. So jumping into our next question. So specifically, what knowledge will clinical providers gain, professionals gain by obtaining this certification, and what makes it unique? So all of our certifications here at Evergreen require continuing education and specific topics. And some of those topics here that professionals will be learning in the certification education will be the diagnostic process, differential diagnosis, medication interventions and non-medication interventions, psychopharmacology, ADHD in the community, things like that. So I'd love for you to jump in, kind of talk through in a little bit more depth about each of those or some of those topics and what professionals will really gain by going through education in this topic.
Sure. So when I was on the committee to form this certification, we thought it was really important to touch on all the different areas of ADHD. That included the developmental process, because a long time ago we thought the ADHD kind of outgrew it. Now we know that's definitely not the case. So we talked about ADHD throughout the lifespan, also talking about what treatments work and what may not work as well. We know through research that the most effective treatment through decades of research is stimulant medication. And also the ADHD is also comorbid with several different disorders like generalized anxiety disorder, major depressive disorder, social anxiety. So we also touch on that too, especially in the differential diagnosis section, where you can break down through a decision-making tree where you might be going with your diagnosis. Also, questions to ask people, questions to ask parents, questions to ask the adult with ADHD, especially because when you're asking someone about their symptoms prior to the age of 12, it can be pretty hard for some adults to remember those symptoms. So we talk a little bit about how to break that down, what questions to ask, how to get to the information that you might be needing.
Yeah, all super valuable. So the certification in and of itself is meant for licensed clinical mental health professionals, including psychologists, counselors, social workers. Who else would benefit from this that I'm missing?
Speech language pathologists, occupational therapists, also nurse practitioners, psychiatrists, anybody that's a mental health professional, or also that works with pediatrics. I think that this is something that when you work in any pediatric field, you're going to see children with ADHD. As any type of mental health professional, you'll see adults with ADHD as well. So I think it covers and is delivered in a way that applies to all the different professions.
Yes, and thank you for bringing up those professions. With the certification process here at Evergreen, we actually have a different credential for each of those, I'll say, buckets of professionals, right? We have one for the clinical mental health side, one for our rehab professionals that are day in and day out with dealing with the diagnosis as well, and then as well one for our educators. Mm-hmm. So it's really a nice way to be able to hit all of those professions with a credential that's relevant for them.
Oh, so I promoted more stuff than just this. Wow, I'm winning today.
Yes, exactly. Very good. Awesome. So one of our requirements for this certification, when we worked with the board and we developed those requirements for applicants to meet, was to conduct a minimum of 200 clinical hours with ADHD diagnosed clients. So when we set that requirement, kind of talk through for our viewers why completing those hours prior to being granted their certification will help them enhance their clinical practice.
Sure. I think when we came up with that criteria, we were looking at the fact that there's not only the piece of the academic learning part, but there's also the application. And we felt that that number of hours was enough that you might be able to see ADHD through the lifespan. And you might be able to see some of those comorbidities that go with ADHD, like I said, depression, anxiety, social anxiety. So we felt that that was a really essential component, because we want to make sure that you're able to take the information that you've learned and apply it to real life. This is why you're doing the training, right? Is so you can go into your own practice, own clinic, own hospital, and diagnose. So I think that criteria was especially important. And I think that we made sure that it was that 200 hours because of, again, the multifaceted nature of ADHD. This isn't just something that happens at school and at home. This is something that leads to a shorter lifespan, on average of 10 years, higher rate of substance abuse, 4 to 6 times higher substance abuse when you are not treated for ADHD. It impacts all areas of life. So we want to make sure that people had the opportunity to make sure that they saw all those different facets of ADHD. And I think there was another part of your question I'm not sure I got to.
No, you're fine. That was perfect. You got to my whole question there. Okay. I think those 200 hours too, right? We really, as the board was developing this and working together, I think it came up to that. As you work in clinical practice, we want people to be able to have cases and be able to say, oh, I need more information on that, right? Or I need to reach out to a peer or a consultant or whoever that might be and discuss this case, because I really could use more information. And those types of things come up while you're working in practice versus they don't always come up in every single scenario that you can get in a training necessarily.
Right. And the research is changing so quickly too. So I think that's another reason why it's really important to do case consultation, to do supervision, to ask questions, because new research is coming out all the time. It's a really exciting time for issues, involving the brain because of the wealth of information that's coming in.
Well, you are just playing right into our next question here, right around renewal. So after the initial 2-year renewal 2-year initial certification, part of having the certification is maintaining it and taking continuing education every 2 years or throughout those 2 years in order to maintain that certification. So I think you kind of just answered that, but let's touch on this again. Why is it so important for people to maintain their knowledge and training in this topic area?
Well, I think part of when we took on our licenses is we took on the obligation to keep up to date with the current research, to keep up to date with certifications, to advocate for those that also may not be able to advocate for themselves, which includes keeping up to date with the newest research. And again, like I mentioned, the latest research on the heritable or an inherited nature of ADHD, there's a lot more research coming out about that. Dopamine reward pathways, different genes involved in the heritability of ADHD. And I think because there's so much new information coming out, and again, some of the information you'll find just in general, some of it's from very reputable sources, some maybe not. And I think the important thing is you had a team of trained professionals that specialize in ADHD forming this criteria. And so you had kind of top-notch standards set up that you are going to learn a lot. And every 2 years, you may get new information. You may see new research coming out. And we wanted to make it as, not only just educational, but also fun for you to learn more and more about what people with ADHD see, what they experience in life, how the brain research is changing. So I think 2 years is a really good time frame to learn about all those breakthroughs in the cutting edge research.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, you played right into my next question, talking about the board here. So as Evergreen is developing certifications, we work with professionals. We develop a board of advisors, if we like to call them, of professionals in the field who are experts in the topic area that we're developing certification in, so that we can get a well-rounded, clinically sound certification as we're developing that. So can you, Stephanie, tell myself and the audience and everyone watching why you were passionate about developing the ADHD certification with Evergreen?
Well, one of them, if I can name drop, one was that Russell Barkley was on the
Yes.
board with me. So, and he's someone that I have followed his research from the time I started graduate school. So that was really a treat to work with him. And again, top-notch clinician. So that's putting it mildly. So also, I think it's really important to have a standardized format of learning. And again, this style of learning, we wanted to, again, create a style of training that was ADHD friendly, because again, we tend to specialize in what is affecting us and personally. So I think that the self-study program really lends itself well to that. And I think that it's something that we need more and more people that do specialize in ADHD. I think that we are kind of facing a shortage of mental health professionals, particularly in the areas of pediatrics. So I think it's really important that we have more and more people that are certified.
Absolutely. Well, I think that wraps up all of my questions. Do you have anything else to add before we hop off here?
I just feel like the program is one that is applicable to anyone, regardless of your specialization, your license, how much clinical experience you have. I think everyone can glean something from it that they can apply to their own practice.
Yeah, and that's actually, I appreciate it, and great point. So, we have professional standards, as we talked about, who can get certified, and those 200 clinical hours that are required. But individuals, after completing a training that meets our education requirements, have 2 years from the date of that completion to apply for certification. So certainly, if you're getting to the point of getting close to those clinical hours, or if you are at the point where you're going to be one of those licensed professionals in the coming months, you certainly can start the training process. And like I said, have that 2-year window to apply for certification. So, and then, like you said, everybody and anybody can definitely benefit from more knowledge in the topic area, regardless of pursuit of certification or not. Thank you, Stephanie, for joining me today. I think that wraps up my questions for you. We appreciate your time, and we hope you have a great afternoon.
Thank you. You too, Rachel.